And today we have a nice looking PC with some very interesting things inside. First off, I should note that it's packed into this Gamdias Aura PC case, which is a solid budget option if you're looking to not spend too much. It features three 120mm air intake fans with a mesh grille for good airflow, and a 120mm exhaust fan. And the lights are controlled by this LED button on the top of the case. Beside that, while we're here, there's 2x USB 2.0, USB 3.0, and microphone and headphone jacks. Underneath this Thermalred Assassin Spirit CPU cooler, we have a AMD Ryzen 5 7500F CPU with 6 cores and 12 threads. A great budget option if you're looking to invest in the AM5 platform without spending way too much. Beside that, there's 16GB of Patriot DDR5 4800MHz RAM, and there's Windows 11 Pro installed onto this 1TB Samsung PM9A1 NVMe solid state drive. I had to take the tempered glass panel off the case so we can get a better look at the hardware without so much glare. So we can see that I managed to stuff in a rather large EVGA FTW3 Ultra RTX 3080 Ti graphics card. This beefy GPU features 12GB of GDDR6 memory, and it pairs really well with this 6-core 12-thread Ryzen 5 CPU and DDR5 memory. And this is all packed onto a MSI Pro A620M-E motherboard. By the way, don't eat the CMOS battery. This motherboard is a great budget choice right now. If you want to go check out the specs, I highly encourage you to go look it up on the motherboard website. And powering the system is a Corsair RM850X 850-watt modular power supply. And now it might look like these PCIe cables are a little bit tight, packed up against the tempered glass panel, but there's actually a fair amount of room here. I know it looks a little bit deceiving, but it's totally fine. Now, as for cooling, I've had this particular graphics card in 3 different systems. This case, my workstation PC, and another older gaming setup that I had with one that only had one air intake fan. All 3 systems had this card running pretty hot, and with the different variety of cases, I think I can verify that the results didn't really differ all that much. The key ingredient to running this graphics card efficiently is playing around with some undervolting, which I'll get into right now. And so what I've been doing, along with many other people online, if you do search something like this up with the 3080 Ti, I use MSI Afterburner to undervolt the GPU. So with Afterburner open, we go to Curve Editor, and we can go over to this voltage frequency curve editor. So I've been playing around with different settings, and I decided to keep the voltage around 856 and the frequency around 1920 megahertz. And I've been doing some tests with MSI Combustor to monitor temperatures and to see if these settings are appropriate for the system. Because this PC is going up for sale, managing the temperatures and making sure the card's performing okay is something I can relate to the customer, and to make sure there's no surprises later on. Beyond that, I did also change the thermal paste and some of the thermal pads. You'll see in the gaming footage with some of the more demanding titles, the temperature got up to 84 or 85 degrees Celsius. I think the important piece to remember is that it was running stable at those temps and did not go above. If the card starts running up to the 90s, then there's definitely a problem that needs to be solved. Onto the rear I/O, the motherboard, we have an HDMI and VGA port that we can't use with this particular CPU because there's no integrated graphics. There's a mouse and keyboard PS2 port, 4x USB 3.2, 2x USB 2.0, RJ45 Ethernet port, microphone, headphone, and audio jacks. And the 3080 Ti features 1x HDMI 2.1 and 3x DisplayPort 1.4a. So one thing I was kind of excited to do was to test out video rendering in DaVinci Resolve. I've got my regular 11 minutes of 1080p raw footage lined up. This PC is doing a really good job with DaVinci Resolve 19. I think it's highly capable of video editing. However, let's see how long it takes to render this job. Our CPU is really working for it at 100%. We're using 6.9 gigabytes of RAM, and our GPU is hovering around 30%. And it took 2 minutes and 24 seconds to complete. That's really good. And here's the video in all its glory. Hopefully this video gave you a good enough overview of how this hardware combination will run in 2024. My usual choice of games right now is basically just what I have in my Steam and Epic Games library. If you have any recommendations for games that are good for benchmarking, let me know in the comments. So let's get on to that gameplay footage, and thanks a lot for checking out my video.